Final question. This
Yeah.
is more of a policy question, and I know you're a big advocate. I think you even submitted legislation, and then I think you were kind of I think your idea was stolen by Governor McKee, actually. But you put in legislation a few years ago to require Rhode Island to follow the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, their
Yeah.
emission standards.
Yeah.
Governor McKee, that legislation was then basically killed, and Governor McKee put it in his budget, and he took
Yep.
credit for it.
Yep.
You can agree or disagree with
No,
that, but
that's fine. I love it when that happens.
that's how I saw it. But either way, it's now state
Yeah.
policy. Part of that is the electrical vehicle
Yeah.
mandate. As you know, every state has to either choose to follow federal emission standards or California's emission standards. Rhode Island now is one of a dozen or 15 states that follows California's standards. The federal landscape is now dramatically changed with
Yes.
this incoming administration.
Yep.
There will be no more federal subsidies for electric vehicles or electrical vehicle infrastructure. There will be no more federal mandates on electric vehicles. Why should Rhode Islanders, in your view, still be forced to buy electric vehicles in the coming decade and remove higher costs and with much lower choice? Should we still have an electric vehicle mandate in this state?
I think we should. I will say again, the mandate is that no new gas-powered vehicles will be sold after that point in time, which is a decade away. Um, the
But
reality,
increasingly so every year until
increasingly
then.
so every year, the purpose of that, and when I introduced that legislation, was also just to make sure that Rhode Islanders had the opportunity and the access to purchase those things, because by passing that policy, you send a message to EV manufacturers that Rhode Island is a market. And the reality is that the demand for
Well, it's
EVs,
not an opportunity, it's a mandate.
no, 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 I'm saying,
You're removing their opportunity to buy gas powered cars.
which is honestly, which is if you look at it, aligned with what all the auto manufacturers are doing. The major
No, they're
auto
backtracking.
the
They're,
major auto manufacturers.
I had Representative Chris Hurd, who's a member of the Rhode Island Automobile Dealers Association. They can't sell the cars on a lot. People don't want them right now. People, and imagine when the federal subsidies go away, they're going to
Mhm.
want them even less.
And
So
the thing
again,
is,
I ask, is it, I can understand maybe why you put the mandate in a few years ago, but
yep.
everything's changed in the last month.
And and the thing is I am always a person who is willing to take on new information and move in a different direction if the realities change. So, I mean,
All right, I'd like to talk to you about that.
I do still think that it's an important goal to try to reach. I also want
Why?
to,
Why?
because again, emissions are not good. Like, and the reality is also that the more saturation we have of EVs, the more we have costs coming down, and ultimately the total cost of ownership for the consumer is much lower than a gas powered vehicle.
But shouldn't that
And
be a
so
consumer's choice?
uh, I
Again,
respect what
like
you're
green energy,
saying.
I think EVs are
Yep.
great cars. I just
Yep.
don't think people should be ordered. That's the only car you can buy.
I can respect that. But again, I think that there are certain policy tools that we try to use to drive adoption of things, to incentivize things. Your point about the incentives going away is a good one. I also want to be really clear that from an environmental standpoint, a community use standpoint, everything else, EVs aren't like the savior of the environment,
Well,
or
I know
anything
that's how
else.
they're positioned.
We need better public transportation. We need more walkable communities. I mean, I'm a big proponent of all of those things. Just replacing a gas powered vehicle with a single EV, isn't going to solve all of our problems. But so I mean, your question is a good one. And as we're watching kind of how this federal landscape unfolds, I think it is going to be important to look at the reality of some of those policies.
And that's
But
all
for
we ask
now,
for is reality.
but
That's
for
all we ask
now,
for is reality.
I think it's still a good goal. I think it's still
All
something, you know
right.
what? If we dream big and fall short, I'm okay with that.